Our top story today, new bombshell polling suggests that the Tories could be left with just 98 members of Parliament.
Yes, forecasting the worst ever Conservative Party defeat in history. 14 serving ministers and even the Prime Minister himself, Rishi Sunak, could lose their seats.
Well, political commentator Matthew Stadlen is still with us this morning, and we're also joined by the Telegraph's Poppy Colburn down the line. Good morning to you both. Poppy, I'm going to come to you first. Do you think there's any chance of the Tories turning things around before the election?
I think if this poll is anywhat accurate, which I personally think it is, then no. We're actually not just talking about a wipeout at the general election. We're talking about the end of the party altogether. I mean, if the Conservative Party does worse than they did in 1906, they got 156 seats then. We're now talking about double digits. It's over. This is also a possibility where all of the front benchers, including the Prime Minister himself, are gone. And that also means all of the people, the runners and riders, potentially to take over as the next leader of the party, and that would be leader of the opposition, are also all gone, apart from Kemi Badenoch. So it won't be a very exciting competition if that does happen. But there's no way that they can bring this back from the brink if they're already here. This is about mitigating losses. This is about trying to keep as many MPs as they possibly can. But the public have clearly just given up.
Matthew, these figures are so damning. Labour on 45%, Conservatives 26%, Lib Dems 10.4%, Reform 8.5%. I mean, there is a lot of arguing going on, blame, attribution of blame amongst the Conservative Party themselves. Even if he survives, let's say, and we were talking earlier about a no-confidence vote, even if he survives that, a leading rebel organiser has says, you know, could you imagine he goes into the campaign saying, vote for me, don't vote for this lot, even though they don't like me. I mean, the whole thing would be absolutely extraordinary.
It's a complete mess for the Conservatives. I mean, you said just a moment ago, didn't you, that it's still all to play for. Is it really?
I'm putting both sides of it. Well, I'm putting both sides of it.
What is true is that a week is a long time in politics, and therefore a few months is quite a substantial time in politics. I think the main problem for this Conservative government and for Rishi Sunak is not Keir Starmer, although he's done a reasonable job as Labour leader. It's not the Labour Party. It's the fact that 14 years is an absolute age in politics, and people have had enough. People have stopped listening.
And Poppy, do you think we could even see a situation by this time next year where the Tory party aren't even the opposition party?
If this poll is correct, that's the end of the Conservative Party. There's no way that they're coming back from this. If they have 98 seats, worst case scenario, they lose their Prime Minister. I mean, this isn't just having a Michael Portillo moment. This is your entire party being completely wiped out. And it's not like the party is even unified here. I mean, there have been talk about replacing the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, with somebody else. They can't even figure out who they actually want. They don't know when they want an election. They don't know who they want to lead the party. They don't know what policies they want to lead the party. This is complete extinction level event.
And Matthew, Poppy just says it's an extinction level event, and I would agree with her, actually. There was a lovely line from one of the ministers saying, well, Rishi's selling point was supposed to be that he was a bit rubbish at politics, but he was good at governing. And it turns out he's actually not very good at that either.
Yeah, the problems are mounting up. I actually don't think... I'm a left-leaning commentator, as you know. I do not think it would be good for democracy in this country if the Tories are wiped out to that extent, because
Agreed.
As well as a robust media, and it's not always been that robust in holding the Tories to account, we do need a robust opposition. So if they end up with fewer than 100 seats, and I don't think this will happen, but if they do, that is not a good thing. Will they still be the official opposition? Of course they will be.
Well, that's not what Poppy says. Poppy also, just in terms of Rishi Sunak, apparently he is miserable, he's snappy, people are saying he's hangry because he's fasting, so he's angry, he has low blood glucose, and apparently the mood amongst the Conservatives is dire.
Well, people that I've spoken to who are around the Prime Minister seem to say the same sort of thing. I mean, the problem is, he's apparently been going around asking people, I heard it's an interview a few weeks ago, am I doing a good job? What am I doing wrong? Yeah. I don't really understand. And I completely agree with what Matthew just said. He's supposed to be the competent, get rid of Liz Truss. Liz Truss is a soap opera disaster. Boris is kicked out. Don't worry, Rishi Sunak is someone that will steadily rise in the polls. You've seen the opposite happen. You've seen him steadily drop. Nobody wants another leadership contest. Everybody knows that it would be disastrous. Everybody knows getting a third leader in who's not elected by the general public would be an embarrassment. Because he's performing so badly, even people who know that this is a terrible idea are going, well, surely it can't be any worse. If we're polling to get 98 seats at the general election, we just need to go with whatever works. I mean, this is panic mode now. It's absolutely horrendous for the Prime Minister. And I imagine, he's only human. He probably feels awful about it.
And Poppy, what do you think the prospects are for the Reform Party? They're obviously polling quite well at the moment.
I think that they will probably exceed expectations, even considering their polling being very good. And the reason for that is it's so easy to outflank the Conservative Party from the right at the moment. Before, when we've seen a right-wing challenge to the Conservatives, there's always been a last-minute stand down. This is like the Brexit Party, for example, saying, well, we've kind of got what we wanted, the party saying what we want them to say, so we're not going to contest this number of seats. I don't think that's going to happen this time. I imagine that Richard Tice, the leader of the Reform Party, is gunning for the end of the Conservative Party altogether and maybe has mind of becoming his own right-wing opposition party. I think that this is going to be one of the major points that really, really, really damages them. They are just so vulnerable from their right flank because they haven't really delivered any serious right-wing policies. They've certainly said right-wing things. They haven't actually followed through on anything. They've tracked their electoral strategy on stopping the boats. Well, they haven't done that. And when the summer comes, we'll probably see the highest level of boat crossings we've seen in recorded history. So that's just something that the longer they put this election off, the more likely it is that right-wing challenge becomes extremely strong and difficult to...
And we're starting to see that, Poppy, aren't we? We're starting to see the Conservative Party turning on Reform, saying you need to stand down. Well, I'll tell you what, the Reform stood down last time, giving the Conservative Party an 80-seat majority.
Well, the
Brexit Party, Reform being the reincarnation of that. Richard Tice has been very clear that is not happening this time.
No,
and actually, he says it's time the Conservatives stood down for Reform.
I've got to know Richard a little bit through TV appearances. He and Nigel Farage are absolutely determined, I think, to smash the Tories this time. As you rightly say, they helped Boris Johnson. They helped him a little bit towards his majority of 80 last time. It's so interesting, isn't it? Because people like me are attacking the Tories from the left. People like Richard Tice are attacking the Tories from the right. One of the things that I think will help Labour is that the left of politics in this country, I suspect, when it comes to the election, will vote tactically. Whereas on the right, there is a real risk. I don't think it will be as substantial as the polls suggest, but there is a real risk for the Tories that Reform will take some of their votes. One of the really interesting things in the Sunday Times piece yesterday, which was the sort of home of this big poll, this 15,000 people survey, is that it said that Rishi Sunak, and this is sort of gossip, but that he's not decisive. So if you rule, you have to be able to make decisions and you have to be able to make them reasonably quickly. Yes, of course, he's very clever, but he sort of is said to be seeing things on the one hand, on the other hand, and then trying to triangulate. That is not the recipe for being a successful Prime Minister.